Erev Tov to everybody. Good
Erev
evening.
Tov, Rabbi.
Erev Tov. Okay, let me get my stuff up. Um, I gotta share. Okay, I gotta claim the host. Yep. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, did that. Let me get my Tanakh up. Um, Yahoo, Yahoo. Okay. Okay. Let's get back to our Zoom and share. Uh, more share. Okay. Beseder, Erev Tov to everybody. Tonight we're going to do a a haftorah, actually two haftorahs, depending on your tradition. That is very famous. It's not a complicated haftorah. It's not a complicated perek. So we'll do it. We'll probably finish earlier than usual, um, but we'll try to see what is the focus and what's the uniqueness of this section as opposed to other sections in this part of Sefer Yishayahu. We're going to be doing tonight the haftorah that's called Rani Akara Lo Yalada, which is a haftorah which we read on Parshat Noach. Um, Sfaradim read just the first 10 verses, as opposed to Ashkenazim that continue in Parshat Noach and read till the very end of the entire perek. When it comes to um, Sefer Dvarim, we read this again in Parshat as the Haftarah of Parshat Re'eh. We read this second half. Aniyas Soara Lo Nuchama until the end of and it goes into Parak Nun Hey. It goes into Parak Nun Hey, and on the other hand, what should I call it? Um, for Parshat Ki Teitzei, for Parshat Ki Teitzei, again, this is during the Sheva de Nechemta, we read just the first 10 psukim, Aroni Akara Lo Yalada. So this is read twice, at least twice a year, and it's very, very familiar territory in terms of the text. So let's take a look at this beautiful haftarah. So this haftarah is speaking to the Jewish people. If you, in a certain sense, it's a contrast to the pre. On the one hand, it's a contrast. On the other hand, it's not a contrast. You'll see in a sec. It is a contrast, but it still has echoes of the previous chapter. The previous chapter, which we studied in depth 2 weeks, was about the suffering servant. Was about a male figure. This haftorah is about a female figure, about the woman who is Roni Akara Lo Yalada Pitzchi Rina B'Tzahali Lo Chala Ki Rabim B'nei Shomema Mibnei Beula Amar Hashem. So this woman is called by four different names: Akara, barren; Lo Yalada, she does not have the ability to have children; Lo Chala, she's not a woman who's been having uh, chil. She's not had any labor pains. She's not experienced the labor pains because she is bereft of children, and she's called shomema, desolate. So it's in a certain sense one, two, three, four different terms to describe this woman. Again, it's not the suffering servant. It's not a male imagery. It's a female imagery. Notice it's also bookended, akara and shomima, which are don't have the low. It's not what they don't have. It's a more positive statement of not positive in a positive sense, but positive in the sense that it's a description. She's akara and she's shomema. She is in a state of of akarut and in a state of shomemut, of being desolate. And this woman is now called on to recognize that the redemption is on its coming. Roni akara. Roni means to sing, like lechu niranina, pitzchi rina, open up, cry out. Pitzchi liftoach means to open. Open up, cry out in joy. V'tzahali, tzahola, gila rina ditza chedva tzahola. Ki rabim b'nei shomema. More numerous will be the children who come back and who are born from the one who was once desolate, mibnei beula, as opposed to the one who was previously had been taken in marriage and had been married, beulat baal, a woman who has already been married. So this image of the geula as more children, more this, more that. Now, the connection literarily to the previous chapter is that in the previous chapter, for example, the Navi had described in chapter 53, verse in chapter I'm sorry, in chapter 52, go back one, in chapter 52, where this nevuah had started, the suffering servant had started in verse 12. In verse 13, Hine yaskil avdi yarum v'nisa v'gava ma'od ka'asher shamemu alecha rabim, as many had looked upon you as being desolate. Shamemu alecha rabim is a kind of, they looked on you and how desolate you were. Shamu alecha rabim is very similar to the phrase here in chapter 44, 54. Rani akara lo elad pitzchi v'ni v'tzalel lo chala ki rabim b'nei shomema. Rabim b'nei shomema. It's a play on the previous phrase. Here it's rabim b'nei shomema. Numerous will be the descendants, the children of the one who was up until this point shomema, which is again a play off of a reversal of a description in this passage. Kasher shamemu alecha rabim. You have the rabim and you have the shamemu. Kasher shamemu, as people looked upon you and saw your desolation. Many people looked upon you and saw your desolation. Here it's the rabim will emerge from you in a way. And there are other connections which we'll see as we go along to the previous, but this is kind of the most obvious one as we start the nevuah. So the nevuah speaks of Rani akara lo yalada pitzchi rina v'tzohali lo chala ki rabim b'nei shomema. Also, of course, the phrase Roni akara lo yalada takes us back to Genesis. It takes us back to Sarah. It takes us back to the imahot. The imahot are described as akarot, as women who were barren. It says, Vatihi Sarah akara ein la valad. She has no children. So this description, so to speak, echoes back to Abraham and Sarah, which is a theme that we've had before in the Nevuot of remember Abraham who created you, your forefather. Remember Sarah who brought you into being. And so to speak, the miracle that happened to Abraham and Sarah, to Yitzchak and to Rivka, to Rachel, is going to happen as well to the Jewish people, to their descendants. And it now has this interesting phrase. As so many people are going to emerge from what was once a destruction, so you need to expand your cities, your tents. Harchivi mikol mahalaych. Open up, stretch out the places of your tents, v'yiriot mishkenotayich, and open up and stretch out all of the yiriot, all of um, the canvases of the places where you lived. Yatu al tachsochi, don't be stingy. Ha'arichi meitaraich, make your meitarim, like Gesher HaMeitarim in Jerusalem, the strings, the ropes, stretch them out. V'tedotai chazeki, and and put the stakes of wood that you put down the ropes and the tents, make them strong because you're going to have to push them out a lot. And so the places are going to need more and more and more space. Now this pasuk is a play off of a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. And again, if this is taking place if this is nevuah was said post the Churban, during the time when the Jews are coming back or are going to come back to Jerusalem. So when we look at Yirmiyahu, just to take an example, in Yirmiyahu, let's go back, in Yirmiyahu Perek, what did I write down here? In Yirmiyahu Perek Yud, we look in the book of Jeremiah in chapter 10. So it describes in Jeremiah chapter 10, so it speaks of, I think it's here. So the Navi speaks about Oy li al shivri, woe to me on my destruction. Nachla makati, the nachala that received its makah. Vani amarti achzeh choli va'esaenu. This is my disease and I will bear it. Ohali shudad, my tent was shudad, was pillaged. The chol meitarai nitaku, and all of the ropes that held up my ohel were cut off. Banai yitzauni, my children abandoned. Ve'enam, ein note od ohali, there is nobody putting down any more of my tent. Umekim yiriotai, there is nobody setting up the canvas of the walls of the tent. So, in the description of the destruction of Jerusalem, it's very, very sharp that my tent has been pillaged, it's been ravaged, all of the ropes that held up my places of lodging, of being, were cut. My children, nobody's building any more tents, nobody's establishing any more places. So now, when the Navi here, again, I think he was echoing, this language of Yishayahu. Yishayahu is echoing, playing off of that language. This part of Yishayahu is playing off of the language of Yirmiyahu. Now that we return to Yerushalayim, now that we have the redemption, harchivi mikom ohalayich, spread out, build more and more tents. Viriot mishkenotayich, yatu al tachsochu, let them be established. Yatu, they should move them out, bigger and bigger and bigger tents. Ha'arichi meitaraich, v'teidotayich chazak. Okay, so this is a very appropriate and uh, beautiful image in this context here. Ki amin usmol tifrotzi, because you will spread out, which of course gets incorporated into the Lecha Dodi prayer as well. Ki amin usmol tifrotzi, you will be, you will you will spread out, you will be porates, you'll okay, you'll go from from place to place. And in the Bible, Yaminun small, like when Abraham was talking to Lot, it means north and south. So you'll spread through the entire Eretz Yisrael. You'll go Yaminu small tifrotzi, and and you'll continue. You'll continue, and you'll grow, and you'll continue, and you'll continue to grow. V'zar'ech goyim yirash ve'arim neshamot yoshivu. They will reestablish the cities that were once shomimot, that were once desolate, that were devoid of any land, were devoid of any people. They will once again reestablish these cities that were nishamot, that were shomimot, that were unfortunately uninhabitable. Al tiri, don't be afraid. Kiloti kalmi, lo tevoshi. You will not be embarrassed. Al tikalmi. Kilo tachpiri. You will not be made. Again, these are all languages of embarrassment. Kivoshet alumayich tishkachi. The embarrassment of your youth will be forgotten. V'cherpat almunutayich. And the embarrassment of when you were a living widow, an almanah, lo tizkiri od. Again, this was incorporated also into the Lecha Dodi. Lo tevoshi velo tikalmi, lo tachpiri, etc. Ki bo alayich osayich. God, who took you as his husband, as his wife, the one who created you, V'go aleich Kedosh Yisrael Elohei Kol Haaretz Yikare. God will call you, the God of the whole world, who's also your Redeemer, will call you. Ki isha azuva va'atzuvat ruach kra'ach Hashem. If you remember, we had seen in the previous chapters that Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, had said, Vayomer Tzion azavani Hashem v'Hashem shchechani, that they felt that God had abandoned them. Ki isha azuva, like an abandoned woman, va'atzuvat ruach, and a woman who was full of melancholy, of sadness. Kra'ach Adonai, God has called you. Ve'eshet neurim kitima es amar lokayich. It's a rhetorical question. Will God forever reject his beloved Eshet Neurim, the wife of his youth? Which of course reminds us of the book of Yirmiyahu. Zacharti lach chesed neurayich, ahavat kulotayich, lechtecha charai bamidbar. God remembers the love of the youth when the Jewish people were young, so to speak, and God was young, so to speak, in their relationship. And God, and God, and God took them as his people. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu here is describing Eshet Nurim ki Tima Eis. The language here of Tima Eis, of being rejected, of etc., of course, reminds us of the end of the book of Eicha, of how the Churban actually took place. If you look back in the book of Eicha, you look back in the book of Lamentations, when the book ended with that phrase, Ki'im ma'os me'astanu, right? Lama lanetzach tishkacheinu, why forever do you forget us? Ta'azveinu l'orach yamim. Hashivenu Hashem elecha v'nashuva. Bring us back and we will come back. Chadei shamenu kukedem. Ki'im ma'os me'astanu. Because you have rejected us. Ma'os, you have mius, you've made us disgusting. Katzafta aleinu ma'od, you have gotten angry at us. Ketzef is, of course, anger. Katzafta aleinu ma'od. So now, playing off of that, the Navi here, I think, he's playing off of that language, and he's basically speaking about the fact that ki isha azuva va'atzuvat ve'eshet neurim ki tima'es amar lokaich. Will God forever reject, disgust to his eshet neurim? And again, this idea of Vatomer Tzion Azavani Hashem, the sense of being abandoned, the woman who was left and abandoned. Echa Yashva Badad, how it was sitting alone. So God ends this section. Berega Katon Azavtich, in a quick moment, I abandoned you. Uberachamim gdolim akabtzech. But with great rachamim, I will gather you in. Keep that in the back pocket. Bishetzef ketzef. Shetzef in biblical Hebrew means a torrent of anger. Shetzef is a synonym in biblical Hebrew and in modern Hebrew for shetef, a torrent of water, a flash flood. B'shetzef ketzef. It's even used as a phrase today. Shetzef ketzef. In a quick burst of anger, ketzef. Katzavta aleinu ma'od. It was the language that's used in the book of Eicha. The language that's used in the book of, I'm sorry, we're going to do that. The language that's used in the book of Eicha. B'shetzef ketzef histarti panai rega mimech. In this burst of anger, I hid my face from you. Haster panim. In a moment, berega, ubechesed olam richamtech. But with eternal love, I will show mercy on you. So the repetition here of the rachamim, the chesed, amar goalech Adonai, says your Redeemer Israel. So the theme of goalech twice, Hashem tzvakot goalech, your Redeemer, b'shetzef ketzef. Now, once this little section ends of the first 8 psukim, which is the first section of this nevuah. This nevuah is divided into 2. Pasuk 1 through 10 is really a nevuah, and it's divided from 1 to 8, which speaks about the abandoned woman who is being taken back by God, the woman who was rejected, who was the akara, who was the shomema. It ends up berega katona zaftich uberachamim gdolim, but with great rachamim I will gather you back. B'shetzef ketzef, in a burst of quick anger, histarti panai rega mimech ubechesed olam richamtich amar goalech Hashem. But once you introduce the phrase shetzef, which means a torrent, like a torrent of water, a flash flood, notice immediately the Navi picks up on this allusion to a burst of water. Ki meinoach zot li. What happened was like the destruction of the waters in the time of Noach. The destruction of Am Yisrael was like the destruction of the waters of Noach. Asher nishbati me'avor me'noach od al kol haaretz, just as I made a shavua. And that's why this is a second part of the nevuah. God not only promises that he will restore the Jewish people and that he will once again take them as his wife, because he never abandoned his Eshet Neurim. God, so to speak, concretizes it just like he did in the time of Noah with the flood. Ki meinoach zot li asher nishbati me'avor me'noach od al haaretz. Kain nishbati mikzof alaych umigor bach. So too, I am taking a nevuah that I will no longer be angry at you. There will be no more ketzef, which in the book of Eicha, katzafta aleinu ma'od, you got very angry at us. There will be no more anger. Mikzof alayich. There will be no more anger upon you anymore, but rather, ki ha'arimi amushu v'agvaot timutena. Even if the mountains will crumble, and even if the hills will fall apart, which means that even if the shavua not to destroy the world will somehow not be fulfilled, the chazdi me'iteich lo yamush, but my chesed will never abandon you. Ubrit shlomi, and the covenant of my peace, lo tamut amar mirachamei Hashem. So the first part of this nevuah ended with goalei Hashem, and the second part ended with mirachamei Hashem. A number of writers have noted that this nevuah, which speaks about the love and rachamim and chesed and brit that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed to Am Yisrael, to the Jewish people, is echoing or echoed, depending on who you believe wrote what at what time, but seems to echo the language in Tehillim, in a famous Tehillim where God speaks to King David in Tehillim Peitet, in Tehillim 89, where God speaks of Karati Brit Lebechiri. I have forged a covenant with my chosen one. Nishbati LeDavid Avdi. Ad olam achin zarecho baniti ledor kisacha. I've done all these things. So Karati Briti Lebechiri, and God who controls the world and did all these things. So he speaks of Emunati v'chazdi imo, hu yikraeni avi ata eli v'tzur, afani b'choret nenu alel l'malchei aretz, le'olam eshmor lo chazdi, I will show my love, my chesed, to him, ubriti ne'emenet lo, v'samti la'ad zaro, etc., etc. V'chazdi lo afir me'imo, v'lo ashaker be'emunato. So the repetition of this idea, ve'ata zanachta vatim'as, in the past you had rejected, but now God affirms the brit that he will always be with us, and he will be with David. So there are a number of writers who've noticed a lot of language parallels. Again, the idea that David representing the Jewish people, and the Jewish people are also the Bechiri, the chosen one of God. We come back to the home base, what we were doing in Yishayahu. We now move to the second nevuah, which starts with the words Aniyah So'ara. Once again, a woman, not an Ani, but Aniyah, a poor, forlorn So'ara, Milashon Sa'ar, a woman who is very conflicted, and a woman who is full of pathos and 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 all kinds of things that are going on. The Aniyah So'ara, again, a number of descriptions. Before we had 4, Akara lo yalada shomema. Um, Here it's three. Aniyah soara lo nuchama. The woman who had not, up until this point, had received no rachamim, had received no nichama. So this woman who is aniyah, who is poor and downtrodden, who is constantly being shaken from place to place, soara, milashon sa'ar, like a storm, a tempest. Hine anochi marbitz bapuch avanaich v'yesidatich basapirim. So God says, I'm going to spread in your cities marbitz bapuch avanaich. I'm going to turn your cities, your streets. I'm going to pave them bapuch avanaich v'sadatiach basapirim. Puch and sapir are these precious stones. These precious stones. V'samti chadkod shimshotayich ushe'arayich le'avnei ekdach v'chol gvuleich le'avnei chayfetz. So again, the repetition here of these themes, of the beautiful stones. Your Again, let's see if we can translate. Let's see what the best translation of this is. Let's see if we can get out of the share for a second, and let's see if we can find a good translation. Let's get our Sefaria. Let's get our Sefaria translation. Sefaria, Yishayahu, Isaiah. Let's go. So Isaiah 54. Okay, so let's see. Let's get our share back. Let's share it. So let's see how he translates it. So in this context, so here I will lay carbuncles as your building stones and make your foundations of sapphires. I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of precious stones, the whole encircling walls of gems. Now, this is a very interesting theme. The idea of the stones, of these precious stones, which are going to glorify Jerusalem and its pathways, is very evocative. It's very evocative because it reminds us of an interesting passage in the book of Yechezkel. In the book of Yechezkel, so if we go back to, let me go back to Yechezkel. Sorry. Go back to the sharing. Close that. And we go to the book. Let's get this going here. And we go to the book of Ezekiel. When we go to Yechezkel, if I'm not mistaken, what did I write down here? Yechezkel, yes, Perek Chav Chet. So if you look at Yechezkel, in Perek Chav Chet, which I'll share in a second. So Yechezkel, Perek Chav Chet. So Yechezkel describes Gan Eden. He describes what Gan Eden looked like. Be'eden Gan Elohim Hayita. You were once in Gan Eden, in the Gan of God. Kol even yikara misu chatecha. It was full of these precious stones. Odem pitida Yahalom, Tarshish, Shoham, Yashvei, Sapir, Nofach, Barkat, Zahav, etc. The description of Gan Eden is a description the of a place with all these beautiful stones. It's a very interesting imagery. And this idea appears in other places in Tanakh. And the fact that in the Mishkan, on the Choshen, many of these stones appeared, also is another point, another proof to the idea that the Mishkan is a kind of miniature Gan Eden. The place where God is manifest is in is the Mishkan, playing off of Gan Eden. They're Kruvim. There are Kruvim there, just like there are Kruvim in Gan Eden, and many other parallels to Gan Eden and the Mishkan. So here, Jerusalem will be rebuilt with all these beautiful stones. And so that's a beautiful idea, that it will have these stones, again, an echo of Gan Eden. V'chol banayich limudei Adonai, and all of your children will be students of the Lord. V'rav shalom banayich, and there will be great peace for your children. B'tzedakah tekonen, with justice. Rachakime oshek, kilo tirai, umemchita kilo tikrav elecha. So stay away from oshek, from doing terrible things, exploiting the weak. Umemchita kilo tikrav eleich, and from mechita, which is destruction. Hein gor yagur efes meoti migar itach alayich yipol. Whoever starts up with you will fall. And in this, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, promises to protect Am Yisrael. Again, let's read it in terms of we can read it in terms of go back to Amud Habayit. We can read it in Ivrit and Anglit b'makbil, and we can read it so we get a clear sense of the chapter 54. So the Navi here, speaking about this, Kadosh Baruch Hu, b'tzedakah tekoneni, tekonani, you'll be established, you'll be far away from Oshek and from ruin. It's not going to come close to you. Again, like the promise in Sefer Vayikra, Hein Gor Yagur Efes Meoti Migar Itach Alayich Yipol. Whoever comes against you and gathers will fall. Hein Hine Anochi Barati Charash Nofeach Be'esh Pecham Umotzi Chli L'Maasehu. I am the one who's created everything. I'm the one who creates weapons, and I'm the one who creates the ability to destroy. Kol kli yutzar alayich lo yitzlach. And therefore, God, who is the creator of the weapons, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, nothing will be successful. V'chol hashon takum itach lamishpat tarshi. Anyone who rises against you will be found guilty. Zot nachlat avdei Adonai v'tzidkatam meiti neum Adonai. Which, of course, is a beautiful way to close chapter 54. And it also, in a sense, closes the circle because it brings us back to the previous chapter. Brings us back to the previous chapter which began with the theme of Hine yaskil avdi. Behold, my servant shall prosper. Yarum v'nisa v'gavam ma'od. The suffering servant. And here it ends with that phraseology of, in fact, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Kol kli yutzar alayich lo yitzlach, kol lashon takum mitach lamishpat tarshi, zot nachlat avdei Hashem. This is the heritage, this is the inheritance of the Avdei Hashem v'tzidkatam, me'iti ne'um Adonai, so said the Lord. Okay, I wish everybody, as I said there's gonna be a short shear to this week. And Yirtzeh Hashem, we will continue next week on our trip through Sefer Yishayahu. Have a great week, everybody. Kol Tuv.
Thank you so much. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.